She was wiping down the glass table when the first executive walked in. He didn't look at her. Not once. And she didn't stop wiping. It wasn't the first time someone had assumed. The gray uniform, the quiet movements, the way she kept her eyes down and her pace steady. She'd learned it a long time ago that people see what they expect to see. And in a building like this, steel, glass, silence that costs money, no one expected her. The man in the navy suit dropped his briefcase on the table, checked his phone, adjusted his cuffs. She moved to the corner, picked up the wastepaper basket. He still hadn't looked. But she had. She'd seen the monogram on his briefcase, the tightness in his jaw, the way his thumb kept refreshing his inbox. He was nervous. Good. Because what was about to happen was going to ruin him. This is a golden heart story for anyone who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or made to feel invisible. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, have you ever been in a room where no one saw you until it was too late? Her name was Vivian Lang. 52. Widow, former CFO of a company that no longer existed. Not because it failed. Because she sold it for $800 million. And then she disappeared. No interviews, no LinkedIn, no victory lap. She bought a small house on the coast, learned to bake sourdough, and tried very, very hard to forget what ambition had cost her. Her husband, Michael, had been gone 6 years. Heart attack. Office floor, 49 years old. She'd been in a meeting 3 floors up when it happened. She didn't find out until security came to get her. By then it was over. After the funeral, after the sympathy flowers died, after the phone calls stopped, she made herself a promise. No more boardrooms, no more power, no more missed moments. But promises, she'd learned, were easier to make than to keep. Especially when the silence got loud. Across town, in a corner office, with a view he didn't deserve, sat Preston Collier. 47. Divorced twice. COO of Arlo Capital, a private equity firm built on getting mid-sized companies and selling them for parts. He wore bespoke suits and Swiss watches and spoke in the calm, dismissive tone of a man who'd never been told no. Not by investors, not by his board, not by the women he'd quietly pushed out of rooms when they asked the wrong questions. Preston didn't see people. He saw leverage. And right now, his leverage was slipping. Arlo Capital was hemorrhaging clients. Their last 3 acquisitions had tanked. The board was restless. He needed a win. A big one. So when his acquisitions team flagged a struggling logistics company, solid assets, poor leadership, ripe for takeover, he didn't hesitate. He scheduled the pitch meeting, sent his team to do recon, and never bothered to ask who actually owned it. That mistake would cost him everything. Vivian hadn't planned to go back. But 6 months ago, her late husband's college roommate, Jean Provenzano, called her. Jean ran a small logistics company in Pittsburgh. Good people, honest work, barely breaking even. He was drowning. Viv, he'd said, voice shaking. I don't want to sell, but I'm out of options. She'd said no. Twice. But Jean's voice reminded her of Michael's. The same decency, the same stubbornness. So she bought the company. Quietly, through an LLC, no name it. She didn't take a title. Didn't announce herself. She just started showing up. At first, to the warehouse. Then to the office. Then to the Baltimore headquarters, where the real decisions were being made. Or weren't. She wore simple clothes, kept her head down, watched. And what she saw made her furious. The staff thought she was part of the cleaning crew. She didn't correct them. It was easier that way. Easier to hear what people said when they thought no one important was listening. Easier to see who was cutting corners, who was lying in reports, who was preparing to jump ship. She'd been there 3 weeks when she overheard two junior analysts in the break room. "Collier's coming in Thursday." "Preston Collier from Arlo?" "Yeah, full dog and pony show. They're gonna strip us down and flip us in 6 months." "Does Jean know?" "Jean doesn't know anything anymore." Vivian's hand tight and around the spray bottle. She knew exactly who Preston Collier was. She'd watched him dismantle two companies in her old network. Good companies. He gutted them, fired half the staff, sold the rest. Not this time. Thursday morning. Vivian arrived early. She wore the same gray button-down and canvas pants she'd worn all month. Pulled her hair back. Cleaned the 14th floor conference room. At 9:47 a.m., Preston Collier walked in. Tall, pressed, confident. He dropped his bag on the table. Didn't look at her. "Coffee," he said, "black, no sugar." She paused. Looked at him. He still wasn't looking back. "Conference starts at 10, he added, already opening his laptop. Vivian set down the cleaning cloth. Walked to the corner. Poured herself a cup of coffee from the carafe. Sat down. At the head of the table. Preston glanced up. Frowned. "Excuse me." The door opened. Jean walked in, flanked by two board members and the company's interim coup. Jean's eyes went wide when he saw Vivian. She gave him the smallest nod. "Stay calm." Preston stood, extended his hand toward Jean. "Mr. Provenzano, Preston Collier. Arlo Capital. Thank you for having us." Jean shook his hand, still looking at Vivian. Yeah, of course." Preston gestured toward Vivian with a tight smile. "I think there's been a mix-up. We'll need the room." Vivian took a slow sip of coffee. Set the cup down. "No mix-up." Preston blinked. "I'm sorry." She met his eyes for the first time. "I said there's no mix-up, Mr. Collier. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Jean cleared his throat. "Preston, this is Vivian Lang," she said quietly. "Majority shareholder, acting board chair." The room didn't move. Not even the air. For the first time in his career, Preston Collier realized he had walked into the wrong room. His face didn't move, but his fingers curled against the table. "I was told Gene Provenzano owned this company." "He did," Vivian said. "I bought it. 68% equity. Signed 3 weeks ago." She slid a folder across the table. "Documentation's all there, along with a full audit of your acquisition offer." Preston didn't open it. "And you are?" "Someone who's seen your playbook before." His jaw tightened. "I don't know what you think you know. I know you're here to make promises you won't keep. I know you'll cut 70 jobs in the first quarter and offshore the rest. I know you'll strip the pension fund and call it restructuring." She leaned forward. "And I know you thought no one in this room would be smart enough to stop you." Silence. Preston smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Lang, I don't know what kind of game you're playing." "I'm not playing." Her voice was calm. Flat. Final. "This meeting is over." Preston didn't leave. He stood there, stone-faced, recalculating. Then he sat back down. "You're Vivian Lang." It wasn't a question. She didn't answer. "The Vivian Lang sold Helix Systems for, what was it, 800 million? Something like that." He let out a low breath. Leaned back. "You've been here 3 weeks." "Yes." "Dressed like that." "Yes." "Why?" She didn't blink. "Because I wanted to see what kind of people you'd sent. What kind of lies you'd prepared. What kind of company you thought this was." Preston's smile returned, thin, sharp. And you're exactly what I expected." He tilted his head. "You could have called, sent a lawyer, bought me out before I ever walked in. I could have. But you wanted this." "Yes." Why? For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Because men like you only stop when someone makes them. The room was suffocating. Jean looked between them like he was watching a fuse burn down. Preston laced his fingers together. You think you've won? I know I have. You've made an enemy today, Miss Lang. Good, she said softly. I was running low. He left. But not quietly. Not cleanly. He took his team, his files, his composed face. But she saw it. The crack. The anger he couldn't quite hide. What Vivian didn't know yet was that this wasn't over. What she didn't know was that Preston Collier had never lost a fight like this. And when men like him start losing in public, they don't walk away, they retaliate. 2 weeks later, Vivian was still there. She'd moved into a small office on the 10th floor. No nameplate, no assistant. She kept the door open. Employees walked by, some waved, some didn't. Most still thought she was new. She didn't correct them. Jean knocked one afternoon, holding 2 cups of bad breakroom coffee. Got a minute? She gestured to the chair. He sat, sighed. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Viv, I know you're trying to help, but... Jane. She looked at him. Really looked. Michael would have done the same for me. His face softened. He nodded. They sat in silence. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence you only get with people who've survived the same kind of loss. You miss him, Jean said quietly. Every day. He'd be proud. You know that, right? She didn't answer. Because she wasn't sure. Michael had wanted her to slow down. To stop fighting. To let go. And here she was. Back in a boardroom. Back at war. Every filing was a message leave. But something was different this time. She wasn't alone. The staff, once they figured out who she actually was, started coming to her. With questions, with ideas. With problems they'd been too afraid to bring up before. A warehouse manager named Anya knocked one morning. Miss Lang? Vivian. Tanya hesitated. We've been losing shipments on the southern route. For months. I flagged it. No one listened. Vivian looked up. Show me. They spent 4 hours in the warehouse. Pulling records, checking logs. By the end of the day, Vivian had found it. A contractor, skimming product, selling it on the side. She fired him that night. Tanya stared at her. You just believed me? Why wouldn't I? Because no one ever does. Vivian's throat tightened. She knew that feeling. She'd lived it. Over the next month, the company started to shift. Margins improved. Morale lifted. People started staying late not because they had to. Because they wanted to. Vivian felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. But beneath it, always it. You're doing it again. You're disappearing into the work. She pushed the thought away. Then Preston Collier called. It was a private number. She almost didn't answer. Miss Lang. His voice, smooth, cold. Mr. Collier. I wanted to congratulate you. She said nothing. You've turned that company around. Impressive, truly. What do you want? I want to make you an offer. No. You haven't heard it yet. I don't need to. Vivian. The use of her first name made her skin crawl. I'm offering you $1,200 per share. Full buyout. Clean exit. You walk away a hero. She exhaled slowly. And if I say no? Then I go hostile. Silence. I've already acquired 11%. I have friends on your board. Shareholders who are tired of waiting for dividends. Her hand tightened on the phone. I'll drag this out for months. Tie you up in legal. Burn through your capital. And when you're too exhausted to fight anymore, I'll buy it for half what I'm offering now. Her heart was pounding. But her voice stayed level. You think I'm afraid of you. I think you're smart enough to know when you're beaten. Then you don't know me at all." She hung up. But Preston wasn't finished yet. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat in her kitchen, stared at the dark ocean outside her window. Michael's voice in her head. "You don't have to keep fighting, Viv. You've already won." But had she? Or had she just traded one battlefield for another? The next morning, Jean found her in her office, face pale. "We have a problem." He handed her a letter. "A lawsuit. Arlo Capital versus Provenzano Logistics. Breach of fiduciary duty, fraudulent acquisition, shareholder rights violations. All of it baseless. All of it designed to bleed her dry." He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to exhaust her. Vivian read it twice, then set it down. "He's going to destroy us," Jean whispered. She looked up. Her eyes were hard. "No," she said quietly. "He's going to try." That night she stood alone in the bathroom, gripping the sink so hard her knuckles turned white. Not because she was afraid of losing, but because she was tired of always being the one who had to be strong. Vivian spent the next 3 days locked in her office, barely sleeping, barely eating, running numbers, calling old contacts, building a defense. Jean checked on her. So did Tanya. So did half the staff. They brought her coffee, snacks, terrible jokes. And slowly, she realized something. She wasn't fighting for a company anymore. She was fighting for them. For Tanya, who finally had a boss who listened. For Jane, who had given everything to keep his people employed. For the single mom in payroll. The veteran in shipping. The kid in IT who just bought his first house. This wasn't about Preston. It was about what happened when you stopped letting people like him win. She called a meeting. Full staff, all departments. She stood at the front of the room. No podium, no script. "I need to be honest with you," she said. The room went quiet. "We're being sued by a man who wants to take this company apart. And if we fight him, it's going to be hard. It's going to be expensive. And some of you might lose your jobs anyway." She paused. "So I'm giving you a choice. I can sell. Right now. Walk away. You'll all keep your positions for 6 months, maybe a year. After that, She didn't finish. She didn't have to. "Or we fight, and I can't promise we'll win. But I can promise I won't stop until we do." No one spoke. Then Tanya stood. "I'm in." One by one, the rest of the room stood too. Vivian's throat tightened. She nodded. "Then let's get to work. If this story reminds you of someone who refused to give up, or a fight you're in right now, share this with them." The case went to arbitration. Preston's lawyers were sharp, expensive, ruthless. But Vivian had something they didn't. The truth. She'd kept every record, every email, every receipt. She showed the arbitrator how Arlo Capital had used shell companies to manipulate stock prices, how they bribed a board member to leak confidential information, how Preston himself had violated SEC regulations in for previous acquisitions. For 6 weeks, every email felt like a verdict waiting to be delivered. Every delay felt intentional. Like Preston was hoping time would do what his lawyers couldn't. But when the ruling came down, Arlo Capital lost. Not just the case. Their reputation. 3 board members resigned. 2 federal investigations were opened. And Preston Collier's name became a cautionary tale. Vivian didn't smile when the decision was read. She didn't celebrate. She just closed her eyes for a moment and breathed. Because for the first time in years, she was bracing for the next blow. She stood outside the courthouse. Jane beside her. "You did it," he said. She shook her head. "We did it." He smiled. "What now?" She looked at the sky. For the first time in years, she didn't have an answer. And that felt a good. A month later, she stepped down as board chair. Not because she'd lost. Because she'd won. And because she finally understood what Michael had been trying to tell her. You don't have to keep fighting to matter. You just have to show up. She promoted Tanya to coup. Jane stayed on as CEO. Vivian took a consulting role. Part-time, flexible. She started teaching a business class at the community college. Bought a dog. Learned to garden. And every Thursday, she still went to the office. Not to run it. Just to be there. To listen. To support. To remind people that they were seen. Because she knew what it felt like to be invisible. And she'd decided. No one on her watch ever would be again. Thank you for spending this time with Golden Heart Stories. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. And tell me what part of this story stayed with you the most. The moment she was ignored or the moment she refused to be?